Well, it's great to be here. I've been here many times, and I used to race against who used to be the Crown Prince and King Olaf out at Hanko. Came over here. I raced sailboats for a long time. But I thought the thing I could discuss a lot of different things, and we talk a good bit about the foundation. But I thought you'd enjoy the story of how I did business in Africa. And we had a meeting at CNN. When CNN started, we were just in the United States. We just bought a satellite, rented the space on a satellite to cover the United States. But the satellite signal fell into Canada and into Cuba. And Fidel Castro invited me down, and he said, Ted, he said, we got to be good friends. He said, but I didn't even know him then. He said, Ted, CNN, he said, you really got something. He said, when I read about it in the paper that you were going to go on the satellite, and I had my communications people figure out that the signal would be available in Cuba, he said, I had to put a satellite dish in to pick it up, because he said, I've got to know what's going on in the world. You know, I'm at war over in Africa, and I've got to see what's going on. And he said, it's really helpful. He said, for the night, the night that Anwar Sadat was shot, he said, I came into my office and spent the whole night there watching the television to see what was happening and whether Egypt was going to go to war with Israel, he said, I had to do it. He said, it's very difficult for me because, you know, the United States has tried to assassinate me 20 times. And he said, I never spend the night in the same place twice. He says, because I think they might kill me, you know, like we did Osama bin Laden. And he said, so I moved to different places. And he said, I can't afford a satellite dish at every one. So he said, he said, I've got one in my office. I said, when there's really big news, he said, I have to go spend the night in my office. That's it. He said, he said, all the world leaders have got to have CNN. So when I went back to Atlanta, I said, we're going to go cover the whole world. But Africa is kind of isolated from a communication satellite. And I checked, and the U.S. government did not have, there was no satellite, American satellite, that covered Africa. The Russians, the Soviet Union had one because they were communicating with their troops in Angola. They had to have communication. So I said, well, I was doing a lot of business. I already made friends over there with everybody. And I went over and I met the head of the satellite division for the Soviet Union. And I said, I want to use your satellite to go to Africa. He said, what? An American newscast on my satellite, my communist satellite? He said, you must be crazy. I said, how much do you want to charge me? He said, it'd be at least $100,000 a month. I said, I'll write you a check. And this is, but first I went back to my brain trust, the top executives at CNN, and we'd have these little conferences, whether we're going to do this or do that. And you could do this in your business too. You know, you have your little board of people there. And I said, we're going to go to Africa. They said, there's not even, they just all laughed. They said, what do you mean go to Africa? We'll lose our butt there. They said, they don't even have television in Africa. Hell, they don't even have electricity. I said, but the leaders do. And I said, they're going to need CNN. I said, already Africa's got a lot of poverty. It's the poorest continent on earth. And I said, there's nothing worse than being, if we give this information, and instantaneous information, what's happening to stocks and bonds and markets and gold and silver prices, and Africa doesn't get it till a day later. I said, how would you like to be a day late all the time on what's going on in the world? You'd be out of business. You'd be out of business because everything is instantaneous. You've got to have it right now. In fact, if you have the information, for instance, if you have tomorrow's stock prices, you can buy today. If you know what's going on, if you know what horse is going to win the race tomorrow, you know, you can bet on him today and you win, you know. So, in fact, information is power. Somebody said that once. So anyway, I said, we're gonna do it. And they said, well, and the communist satellite, the guy called me up. He said, I checked with the Politburo, and they said, okay. And they said, if you run bad stories about us, we may block them out. I said, you're not going to block out our stories. They said, okay. And anyway, they never blacked out a single story, and it worked. And it cost $1 million a year to rent the satellite the first year, and we made a deal. And it was apartheid back then. This was in the early '80s, and it was apartheid. So I didn't put my bureau in South Africa where all the other networks had their bureaus, BBC, CBS, they were all there. I went up to Kenya, to Nairobi, and we put our bureau in Black Africa, by God, to start out with. But SABC, the South African Broadcasting Company, wanted to use CNN excerpts in their local newscasts. And we worked out a deal with them where they'd pay us $2 million a year for the right to use just the excerpts. This is just in Johannesburg and Cape Town. We had the whole continent to sell to still, all the hotels, and there wasn't any cable then, and there wasn't any satellite, but we were ahead of everything. But at any rate, we were making $1 million a year before we even started. How about that? So you could do goddamn anything. You know, if I could do that, you can do it too. You can make a lot of money down there. And I think solar panels, I thought about that a long time ago. We're at the UN, we're going to try and get electricity to everybody in Africa. And we're going to try probably do it with solar panels on every little hut down there, because if you don't have electricity, your kids can't do their homework at night. It's hard to do work by fire, for God's sakes. I mean, fire's not as good as electricity. You know, otherwise we wouldn't have even needed to worry with electricity. And you can't run a television set with fire either. God bless you.